This next presentation is a panel on charting a future for water-based recreation in the Middle Tennessee watershed. And I know almost all of us do some form of recreation on the Middle Tennessee, and we care about how that goes in the future. This panel is going to be moderated by Brent Martin, who is the former Southern Appalachian Regional Director for the Wilderness Society and former Executive Director for Georgia Forest Watch and Associate Director for the Land Trust of Middle Tennessee. He now leads outings and teaches courses through his own organization, Alarka Institute, and works with the Bartram Trail Society.
Is Ken Kastorf in the room? Ken, come on down. All right. I was really hoping we would have an outfitter on this panel, and Ken, you're it. You and I, up against the scientists, man. And I don't think anyone's here from Outdoor 76, are they? Anyone here from Outdoor 76? Nope. They're opening up a lot of their customers. I agree with you there. Yeah, a lot of their customers are here, I know, but they're opening up their Cherokee store today and had a grand opening and had to cancel us. So I will do a brief round of introductions. These are very informal. You all, Bill McClarney doesn't need an introduction.
I'm the left wing.
Okay, so he's the left wing out here. Yeah. Let's see. Sharon already warned us, no politics.
Has no official position.
Okay, right. Keep you far over there on the left, Bill. So Ken, originally from Wisconsin, founder of Endless River Adventures in 1993. Prior to that, spent 19 years as head kayak instructor for NOC, worked to innovate kayaking, the development of the CDC role as well as standards used today for whitewater kayak instruction. Been a shareholder on 2 relicensing agreements, the Chiowa and the Nantahala rivers, and one of the most experienced fly fishing guides in Western North Carolina. And I just found out about you guys I read Blue Ridge Outdoors magazine, like a lot of y'all read Blue Ridge Outdoors magazine. So I'd seen that Ken, and I'd seen the boats on the Needmore track down there. So I knew that Ken was leading some fishing trips on the Needmore track. So that was great to get Ken to come today.
Hey,
Zach.
Hey, Brent.
Yeah.
Move the microphone closer to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now these other 2 young guys here, I've kind of watched them since they were in middle school, I think. So Zach Talent, I first met when he was working with Bill on the biomonitoring project, and Zach's a super experienced fisherman on this river. Knows a whole lot about the aquatics here, majoring in natural resources management at Western. And are you currently the president of the Bass Fishing Club there? So, another experienced bass fisherman here, also scientist type. And Warren, I can remember when Warren, I think, was about this big, and now he's about 2 feet taller than I am, which isn't hard. But anyway, Warren is now working for the Fish and Wildlife Service in their aquatics program in Cookeville, Tennessee. Is that right? But also a native of this valley, much like Zach. So Bill McClarney, as we know about from his biomonitoring work, has produced a whole lot of volunteers in this watershed, and some of them have gone on to actually become career fisheries people, and that's a very, very positive thing about some of the work that's been done in this watershed. And I think the challenge is getting young people like this to come back here and stay as all of us age out. So I think maybe the way to start this, and like I said, do I really need to introduce you, Bill? I don't need to introduce you, do I? Bill McClarney, been running a biomonitoring project in this watershed for over 30 years. You saw his talk earlier. I first met Bill down in Georgia many years ago when I was running an organization down there on the Conasauga River. Bill taught me a lot about fish. He, Paul Carlson, and William Bartram are the reason I'm living in this valley today. So I'll start out very anecdotally myself about recreation in this valley before turning it over to our panelists. I can remember back in the 1970s hiking the Appalachian Trail from North Carolina, Georgia into North Carolina, and coming out at what is now NOC, which in 77, when I came through there, NOC was this tiny little shack of a store almost sitting down there in the Nantahala Gorge. And you all have seen how recreation has changed that place. and what a difference it has made in that valley, good and bad, for recreation to grow at the rate that it has grown there in that watershed, the Nantahala watershed. And that's just astounding to me how much more populated and denser that area is down there now with recreational interest. In 2003, when I first moved here and saw the Needmore track, I was smitten by the Needmore track. And that was one of the main reasons that I moved up here. It was Paul Carlson and others at the Land Trust at the time, Sharon and Dennis and many others were working to get the Needmore tract acquired. And I was fortunate to get in on the beginning of all that and get to see the Needmore tract become protected. I can remember going down to the Needmore tract on a Sunday afternoon, brilliant Sunday afternoon in the fall or spring or whatever, and fishing and not seeing another soul on that section of the river. And I thought it was just amazing that you could canoe 6-7 miles and not see another boat on a beautiful day. You won't see that now. I think that there are more people finding out about the river. More and more people are coming here for quality of life reasons. A lot of us in this room are here because we wanted to live in an area where there's a big public land space. A lot of people live here because of quality of life decisions, and they want to have, they're into the outdoors, and that's why so many of us are here. We're into the outdoor aspect of living here, the forest, the streams, whatever it is that we tend to be gravitating towards with the natural world. And at that time there was Jerry Anselmo on the river. The Jerry Anselmo empire, of course, has now grown and grown. I think we now have 2 other outfitters on the river, myself included. I don't rent boats or do any of that, but I do guide trips on the river. There's a guy upriver from Jerry now in the upper part of the watershed that's renting boats and has a glamping site, I think is the term that they use for it. And then there's this mystery guide that if any of you all saw the Franklin Press 2 Sundays ago about the boat that capsized in the Little Tennessee River after that incredible storm, the paper said there was a guide in that boat with 5 people. I don't know what kind of guide in his right mind would put a person on that river after that flood we had, but why he would put them on that river with 5 people in a boat is beyond me. So evidently there's another guide out there, and I'm still trying to figure out if any of you know who that guide is. I would really appreciate knowing who that is, because I was really curious about that. So anyway, and now we have Outdoor 76 in town. We got 3 Eagles. Go down to Silva. There's 3 fly shops in Silva. How do you maintain 3 fly shops in Silva? I don't know. Tuckasegee is a world-class trout river. We haven't been discovered to the degree that those other watersheds have been discovered yet. And I think this is probably a pretty critical time for us as a community, people who live here in this valley, to start charting the future for what recreation might be in this valley. I can only predict, based on what we do know about growth predictions for this valley, that we're going to have a whole lot more people here in 20, 30, 40 years. And they're going to be climate refugees, they're going to be people who are ex-urbanites, as we talked about earlier, and God only knows what else, for other reasons of living here. That's another conference, probably. But anyway, maybe we should start. I thought we would start by just maybe going to the panel, and I'd like to ask each panelist to really think about whatever their particular interest in recreation is on this river, how they see that particular interest growing over time, and to kind of fold in what they think a sustainable recreation vision would be for the Little T. And that's something I think all of us should be thinking about here, and it's how we should approach this panel, because after these guys finish with a brief statement from each one of them, I'd like to really turn it over to you all to ask questions. It is after lunch, and it'd be good to have a little more energy flowing back and forth. Steve Morse is not here. If we had Steve here, we probably would add a whole lot more data. So this is going to be kind of data-free, and it's anecdotal. We can have a recreation open mic here, if that's what you all prefer. But I would like to hear from you all as much, because I feel like this is going to be something we very much share in as we go forward into the future in this valley. So Ken, why don't we start with you, just once again, just kind of what your interest in the river is, how you see things going with the river. Were you able to have your world 20 years from now on this river? What would it look like?
First of all, I started using the Little Tennessee River in a recreational sense back in 1975. And 75, 76, we were when I was working for the Hill Outdoor Center at that point in time, we were using the river as the beginning stages for kayak construction. And it still to this day is one of the more popular places for outfitters that are teaching kayaking to take folks over to, because of warm water, okay, and like Manhala, and easy water. You know, being able to take people down and not have them get into something that's, you know, a little bit too far over their head. At about that same time, I had the pleasure of running into one of the former wildlife officers in the area. And coming from Wisconsin, which is, you know, the land of fishing, so to speak, I certainly had that interest back at that point in time in 75 and 76. And that's when I found the Little Tennessee River. It's interesting to see what has happened through the course of the years up to this point in time. Back at that time, I remember coming into MSC, and one of the first jobs I had was to take trash into Bryson City, and I stopped at one of the places in Bryson City to find out where the dump was, and the guy said, well, just dump it in the river. I'm quite serious to this. I didn't think that was too good an idea, so, you know, I figured out where an appropriate place was to dump it in. Over the course of time, looking at the Little Tennessee, one of the things I think that has really improved was after the relicensing, and during that relicensing period, the moratorium that they put on the camping there. And the river at this stage of the game is far, far cleaner. The river bank is far, far cleaner than it's ever been in the past. Now, what's going to happen in the future, I don't know, but as we were just talking about, more and more people are going to come in, so there's going to have to be some work done on infrastructure in general, and in order to control what happens there along the river. And that infrastructure can be anything from, you know, potential of, I'm sure someone will be thinking about putting a campground in somewhere along the line. And also access points. There have been several access points that have been put in over the years. Looking in the future, I think what I would like to see is more collaborative work done with the agencies and the people who are going to be using the infrastructure that's being put in on the river. I see, as an outfitter and a guide, a lot of things a lot of access points have been put in that basically aren't usable. And, you know, so we're moving backwards in that respect. The other thing too that, and again, I'm more of a fishing guide now than a kayak instructor like I used to be, but looking at the fact that working with Federal Fish and Wild, or not Federal Fish and Wild, but the State Fisheries Department, in maybe re-looking at some of the rules and regulations. We have rules and regulations for fishing right now that are 50 years old. When I came to the Nantahala as an example, the fishing regulations are exactly the same now as they were in 1975. When you take a look at the number of people that are coming in and the improvement in fishing technique, fishing equipment, all of these things add up, and especially the numbers, to the fact that are we really in a sustainable situation here? I can remember fishing the Little Tennessee, and it was not unusual to go out there and catch, and at that point in time, I was doing catch and release already, but to go out there and catch, you know, maybe a dozen fish that were in anywhere from the 2 to 6 pound range. Now, to go ahead and go out there and find a 2 pound fish is a rarity. So something's happening, and unless we get a handle on it, I believe it's going to keep on going in the wrong direction. So.
Okay, thanks. Zach?
So, okay, there you go. So as Brent mentioned, I'm a native of the Franklin area, and I obviously can't go back to 1975 or anything like that, what I witnessed on the river then. But my family can. We've been in the valley for 7 to 8 generations. It's where we've always been. And I guess I could say as I've always been able to benefit from, especially from the Needmore tract, since I was very young. I'm 21 now. I think you said it, can't remember what, 2003. So I was 6. So I don't remember exactly, you know, but I do remember growing up and being able to benefit from the Needmore tract, and from working with Mainspring, I've been able to realize just what an asset that is to the community, and not just our local community, but anybody, you know, tourists or anything like that. And I think I'm going to be a little shorter here, but what my vision, I guess, for the watershed would be recreation that's based more from an ecological standpoint, to educate people on maybe the biodiversity of the region and the watershed in general, because it is one of the most healthy river systems anywhere. And there's a lot of people I don't think that realize that, and they really realize exactly the gold mine that they get to witness. And going forward to that, just to educate the public, like you said, to work more with agencies like the Wildlife Resource Commission or even TVA or anything like that, to help the I'm sorry, I've never spoken on a panel before. I'm trying to work.
Doing great.
And essentially, like I just keep repeating over and over, for people to understand what they get to experience. Because for me, especially bass fishing, we've been all over the country witnessing some of the things that I have. It really makes me appreciate what I've been able to grow up in. And I think a problem that I see is this is going to come from me as a sport fisherman. It's an invasive species that has made its way. I've really seen it made its way in just the last few years from Fontana all the way up to the dam at Lake Emery. That's the spotted bass. And I don't know how many people really realize how much of a problem that is. The spotted bass is out competing with smallmouth bass from Fontana all the way up. And it, you know, just 4 or 5 years ago, it wasn't that way. But now, it's every time I'm in the river, it's spotted bass, spotted bass, spotted bass, spotted bass. And to know that the smallmouth is such a popular game fish, and especially this far south of its range, and to see it disappearing like it is, kind of hurts my heart in a way to see that disappear. So just like I said, just to I don't know. I just want to see. I want to see people fish, really, because that's what I think that's what I was put on there to do, and that's what I want to see other people do. I want to see other people be able to enjoy that, but to enjoy it in a way where they understand it.
And not on the section of river that you're on.
Yeah, definitely not that. Definitely not that. That's fine. Thank you.
So in that same vein, I think my folks got here probably just a few days after the talents moved into the watershed. So I grew up in Franklin, and recreating here, of course, you know, got me interested in fishing and fish, and learned to paddle on the Tennessee River, on the Little Tennessee, swimming, hunting, fishing. You know, that just kind of turned my interest in what I was seeing. And through part of that, I ended up being able to do this shadow a biologist thing for good or ill for about 5 years. So anything.
Some of each.
So anything odd or twisted or off the cuff I say, probably Bill's fault.
Yeah.
But being able to do that really helped my understanding of what we have here and why it's important. And so that turned my interest towards becoming a biologist, focusing on aquatics, and, you know, sort of changed my career path, being able to recreate in a place like this. Unlike Zach, I can't catch the big fish, so I had to turn to the little ones. but it's been, a real focus of mine. And we keep talking about need more, and yeah, it was, even when I was young, you didn't see other people out there. So even with all of us on there, we still didn't run into each other. And that's a unique thing. And so, at the risk of sounding like a grumpy local, don't tell anybody about it. No, it's important to get people out. Like I'm saying, it's hard to care for something and want to protect it and love it if you don't know it. And you know it by getting out there and doing it. And so, recreation opens up a way into that and to do that. However, now I have to put on the fish and wildlife biologist side and talk about, doing this responsibly, which how recreation planning going forward looks is really up to the community. This is not anything anybody should be telling the community how they should be doing it. We were talking about regulation has its place, but isn't going to, isn't the solution. So as far as, my concern in that case is doing it responsibly. These access areas, developing them in such a way that they're not sloughing off the banks and, sedimenting more, or we see places where people are recreating, riding off-road vehicles through streams and stuff. And so it's finding a balance of things where we are protecting our resources, and in the case of Fish and Wildlife Service, but with the focus on our endangered and our listed species and our at-risk species. And so, again, working on road sedimentation to these access points and avoiding trampling where there are sensitive plants or sensitive animals. And so that's, as long as it's done in a responsible manner, in some ways, the more people we can expose to this, the better overall conservation outcome we could potentially have. On the other hand, on another part of the Fish and Wildlife Service, which I don't participate in personally, but I know there's resources out there. There are resources for access improvement, grants for that. So building fishing piers or boat ramps and stuff, and that they usually work with the state on getting these kind of accesses out there. And so that's a tool to be able to meet this responsible recreation. And so that's where I'm coming from.
I come to this panel, and I come to my career as a direct consequence of outdoor recreation. My father took me out when I was 3 years old to go fishing, and he set me on a stream bank and said, "If you don't fish, I'm leaving you here." It turned out that I liked it a lot, and it's influenced a lot of things. Among other things, it's led me to corrupt the youth, although I suspect that both Warren and Zach were well on their way down that path before I was. My personal recreation is varied. You might see me out there in the stream with a backpack fish hook around my back, looking like I'm working really hard, and at that point in time I feel like I'm recreating. Or you might see me fishing, or you might see me sitting there eating a sandwich, just because it's a nice place to sit. It's all recreation. The issue, I think, before I get to a vision, because I don't have a clear vision. I think what these guys have said, just correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anybody has a real clear vision of exactly what we want. But the question that I would like to raise more than anything else is recreation for who? And I say that for this reason. I say that I can get real close. If I go down that line, I'm going to get close to immigrant bashing, and I don't want to do that. But you will hear people, not the same people that you see out there on the river with the fishing rod, telling you that we've got to protect the resource because it's recreation, and recreation is good for the economy. True. But these are the same people, some of them, that would support putting a copper mine next to the river if that was good for the economy. And I feel like there's a very clear need in communities like this one, in communities like the one I grew up in New York State and thousands of other places, to encourage local young people to recreate in the outdoors first, and protect that resource for them, for me, I live here, for us first, and then figure out what else is permissible, what else fits. I'll cite what to me is an extreme example. I would not personally go to the Nantahala Gorge during the warm months to have a recreational experience. I feel like, yes, a lot of people have fun there, and yes, it contributes to the economy, and maybe that's more good than bad, but I feel as a local resident that it's something that's been taken away from me I can't use anymore. If I were a teenager growing up in the Nantahala community, I'd be choosing between bowling, golf, and drinking. That said, I think we need to prioritize. We can't just exclude people, obviously. I think we need to prioritize, and I would prioritize it this way. Number one, us. People who have made the commitment to live here, or who in your two guys' case grew up here. Number two, people that are after an educational experience. And I'm not just talking about the high rollers who will take a guided trip, but I'm also talking about city kids that don't have any access to nature, who really need it and whose cooperation we're going to need if we're going to protect anything in this country. Then, if there's anything left over, we'll talk about who else we can sell the experience to. And so that's as close as I can get to a vision.
I'll say one thing before turning it over to you all. I think that there is a conservation vision here. I feel like Mainspring and the other organizations in the past have done an amazing job, and they are in the midst of enacting a conservation vision for this valley. I think recreation is totally tied up with that. So, for example, Sharon saying 30-something miles of the river is now conserved from zero. A lot of these rivers don't have that benefit. A lot of what's happening here as far as protecting this watershed is going to actually, by default, limit somewhat what can happen, right? I don't think maybe that NOC model is even possible here, right? So anyway, I look at the valley first from a conservation perspective, a recreation perspective second, even though I make part of my living taking people out on the river. Why I take people out on the river, though, is a lot of the reasons why Bill McClarney takes people out on the river and into creeks, is to educate them about the river and to educate them about the natural and cultural history here, which I think is a recreational vision that NOC doesn't have. Okay, so questions for the panelists? Yep, Susan.
I think it seems that fewer young people, local young people, not only are not fishing, but they don't know the local geography. They aren't as tied to the place as people were even, when you all were growing up. And I wonder if you have any ideas about knowing Franklin really well and knowing kids here, if you have any idea of what's changing that and how to bring those people back into just the awareness even you had of our local area and water.
So damn cell phones. No,
But one step further, throw the whole computer.
yeah. Personally, especially growing up this generation and graduating from Franklin only 4 years ago, part of what I see is kids that don't want to get stuck in the small town. So they want to go elsewhere. They want to find their recreation elsewhere. They don't understand how to enjoy what they have here, which is really kind of a sad thing to witness. Luckily for me, I got to grow up knowing how to enjoy this. From, like Bill said, when he was 3 years old, his dad took him. That's the same thing with me, but he said, "I'll let you drown." So I mean, literally from the time I could walk, I was able to enjoy everything we have here, whether it be fishing in the river or hunting or anything, hiking, whatever it may be. I was immersed in that from when I was just a small child, and I think now, especially with more and more people that are making their way here from outside of the community and raising their children here, it partially is on them to teach their children how to enjoy it. And not enough, I don't think enough people are doing that. There are too many people, like I played sports too in high school. But I think even to go a step further, there are people that are concentrating more on letting their kids recreate another way than actually enjoy being a child and enjoying, you know, there's nothing better to me than swimming in the river or something like that when I was little. And even like my little siblings are several years younger than me, and they don't enjoy it like I did. And it's sad to see, but I think it's knowing how to enjoy what we have, and not enough people know how to do that.
So take this answer from a biologist, not a social scientist. So these are, you know, in some ways guesses. But like Zach said, it is a lot of, you know, getting the exposure to it. And so I'm not sure if people are working more or too busy, if there's less of an ability for parents to take their kids out. But I mean, that's one guess. But as far as any one thing, I don't know that I could put a finger on it. I think, yeah, having the ability, maybe exposure in schools or other programs, you know, it's hard to say what the answer is.
Can I just throw something in there that just occurred to me? Zach mentioned, you know, people that assume they're going to go somewhere else to make a living. And if you make that assumption early, then you stop thinking quite as hard about the place that you're in. And I would love to think, and I have no solution to that, but I would love to think that people like Zach and like Warren could actually make a living doing what they do well in the place that they grew up. And yet, if you're asking me to advise a young person in terms of making a living and having a future, it's kind of hard for me to make that recommendation. I don't know how you get, I know where there is, I don't know how you get from here to there, because even at my age, I grew up with the same thing. You're supposed to get out of here in order to make something of yourself, and I wind up in Franklin. I'm not sure that I understand the difference now that it's all done. But it's just, I just throw that out as, I'm a lot better at questions than I am at answers. I throw that out as something to be grappled with.
Ken?
So Bill has laid out his priority of users of local water resources. And so my question is, how do you achieve that? Are you suggesting that we do permits that are assigned in that order? And if we can't do it, or if you're not suggesting that, and I know you just said better questions than answers, but how would we achieve that? How would we preserve the use of our resources for local residents?
I got a committee of about 50 people out here that are going to work on that. I really am better at questions than at answers. And no, I don't like the idea of a permit. I mean, that's kind of like turning it into elk hunting in Wyoming. It may be necessary with some kinds of resources, but I think a lot of the problem would tend to solve itself if the kind of values that are in this room were in other corners of our society, and we didn't have so many people who can only see the beauty of the mountains and the beauty of the river and the fishing and all the rest of it as a resource that can be sold. That leads you back to the old cliche about education, and by the time you get this generation educated, the present generation has already screwed it up. But no, Ken, to answer your question directly, I am not advocating some sort of a massive regulatory system which is going to leave everybody unhappy. Anybody else want to add something to that, I hope?
Well, it's true that a lot of the really good work that gets done on conservation, not only in this community but around the country, is spearheaded by fishermen or trout unlimited, or spearheaded by hunting organizations, who are people who come from a whole spectrum of socioeconomic and political and whatever backgrounds, but who really do have a genuine passion, for natural things. And that can have a real grassroots effect on how people behave locally, how they raise the kids. And maybe Jennifer, who works with kids in the school system, can speak to whether there's something coming along sustainable locally in the young people you work with that translates into a passion about nature in this community.
Well, I know that, so I'm the STEM coordinator for Macon County Schools. I'm working with Coweta LTR Schoolyard program. Has been really beneficial, I feel, to the community. That we at Mountain View Intermediate School have started a migration celebration where we get kids outside, and every 6th grader in the county gets a chance to do that. We have a program in 8th grade called Kids in the Creek, where we get students out, learning about or applying their curriculum, what they're learning in their classes in science in 8th grade, and we get them out in the streams and at least expose them to that. And then we're trying to start, well, we have started, but we're trying to expand a Muddy Sneakers program at the 5th grade level for every 5th grade student in the county. And again, that's kind of not specific to water, but it's just getting kids outside and recreating and learning a little bit more about what a special place is that we live. So we are trying to incorporate some of these opportunities, these field trips and things like that, to get every student, not just the kids who want to be part of a science club, or not just the kids who want to be part of an outdoor club, which is something I would love. If anyone wants to start an outdoor recreation club at our schools, I would welcome that with open arms, because I think we need more opportunities after school for our students to get outside. And even on their schoolyard, so working with Mr. Penland to try to restore schoolyard habitat, so even during the day we can get outside with our students and get them in the creek and learn a little bit more about, like you said, what is so special about this place. So I think one of the things that is difficult for the school system is liability. And so when you talk about, I want to throw my kids in a canoe and take them tubing and get them out, and that's just not going to happen.
Can I move back? I absolutely applaud that. I want to move back to an older generation, older than kids. And a question I'm going to throw a little bit at most of the other people on the panel maybe, is this. You mentioned that there are organizations that are active in these recreational areas, and they're mostly not commercial organizations. Susan mentioned Trout Unlimited. Zach belongs to a bass club. There's paddling associations. There's hunters groups. And I have tried over the years to talk with a lot of these people in these organizations and get them to come to meetings and get them to go engage with conservation issues. And I have the nicest conversations. And everybody says the right thing. And nobody comes out to a meeting because for some reason they don't feel comfortable in this other sector of society. How do we get these people integrated into the process?
I stopped answering that question a while back, Bill.
Yeah, I'll just bring up a couple of points for the panel maybe to address. One is, so several members in here are from the local hiking club, and we have reached out to the school systems, here in Macon County, offering our services to take kids out on hikes, and we've been somewhat successful. Unfortunately, the school time and the teacher's time, it's very constrained. Second point I want to bring up is, and probably a lot of you read a lot of the free newspapers, and I've picked up on what Jackson County has done in their county recreation program. Seems to have done an awful lot with different aspects of outdoor recreation as opposed to team sports, let's say. And so if you take what Jennifer says, the school system's trying to do it. It seems to me we need to maybe look at the private organizations, the nonprofits like the hiking club, but also maybe we could talk to our county officials about, let's look at the county recreation program and what could they do to be the next step from what the kids are exposed to in a school environment, that then they could go into these, if you will, nature clubs that are being sponsored by the county recreation department, and whether it be camping or fishing or birding or hiking or whatever.
Weren't you have something you were going to add? I
It's,
saw you.
thinking about that, combining with that in the schools, I think you're right, maybe it needs to be outside of just schools, because school is constrained to, it's only a portion of the year, a portion of time, and there are requirements. We must meet these goals to be successful. And so perhaps it is getting for the hiking clubs to make, well, here is a kids hike. It's not, you can advertise to the schools or advertise and then bring it. And I think that going back even further to how are we going to meet Bill's list without regulation, and maybe that's it, is where do we throwing our resources. It's not, these are the three, people are let through the gate in this order. It's, well, most of our resources are going to this group, and then our next is that, and then follow through. And so that's, I don't know if that answers any questions or raises more, or just kicks the responsibility, passes the buck to somebody else, but that's one possibility.
Kim, did you have something?
Brent, just to let you know, you need to wrap up in 3
Yeah.
minutes.
Molly's on it.
Okay. I wasn't sure who she's up here.
I'm going to be really quick then. Just as sort of a final thing. It's sort of interesting because sitting here listening, I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing what the issues are in the local community, and then also taking in and trying to look forward as to what's going to happen with the number of people that are coming in. Everybody moves into an area, they're hoping they're the last one that gets there. But it doesn't work that way. And, as an outfitter, I can tell you that our ability to remain in business depends on sustainability. I mean, not all outfitters, unfortunately, as we heard earlier, but the great majority of them probably have as much, if not more, concern about the natural resource, because it is dependent on our ability to work. As a fishing guide, you're not going to see a fishing guide leave a bait can on the side of the river. Okay, you're not going to see a fishing guide or a kayaker or an organized kayaking group leave trash on the side of the river. They're much, much more in tune with the importance of that resource. Not just for their income, but also just having an overall view of what is important in general. And obviously the thing that's the most important is that we maintain as close as we possibly can something that is really valued and that we all want to be able to enjoy and be able to utilize. When we were talking just a couple of minutes ago about getting kids involved, I can tell you that in the outfitting community, that's a major, major problem. Back in about 1990 was when the peak of recreation was hitting the Manninghilla Gorge, and there were as many as, I think at that point in time, 185,000 people a year would go down the Manninghilla River. Now that included not just the outfitted public, but also private boaters and everything. That number has decreased substantially. I believe that last year it was down around 120,000. That's a huge drop. And the majority of it comes from the pressures that we see from school activities. School activities go all through the entire summer in some cases now. So you don't get the kids out there. I personally ended up getting into this business, for lack of a better word, through the scouting program. So it was an organized sort of activity that enabled me to get out. I also call this the grandfather syndrome. If you think about it, any of us that are in here that got a chance to get out and really enjoy the outdoors, it was usually with your granddad, because your dad was too busy trying to make a living at that point in time. And I think those granddads are still there, but I think where the problem comes in is the kids aren't there anymore, and there's too much competition, not so much with all the sports and everything, but just like what we were talking about earlier, with the cell phones and computers. You know, back when I was young, the moment that the door was open, I was out of the house. And I didn't come back in until they forced me to come back in. But I didn't have television at that point in time, I didn't have air conditioning at that point in time, and I certainly didn't have an Apple computer.
Do you offer
And
food
games.
grade for children?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to know about that,
Yeah.
to make it affordable.
Yeah, we do. We offer a discounted rate for kids. And then, you know, we also, at the same time, any of the school groups and whatnot, you know, we're always doing something a lot, you know, to try to keep the price down on that. Especially with me, I was in the scouting program for a long time and went all the way through Eagle and, you know, Scoutmaster and all of that. So any of the scouting programs, we always give them as much of a discount as we possibly can and not lose money.
Thank you all, we're out of time, sorry.